Hey, what's up guys? Alright, today we're going to be catching my upper chest and shoulder workout. It's a little bit different split than you normally see in a program. The current phase that I'm in is a mini cutting phase, so my volume's not really high, but an area that I'm always trying to work on is chest. So what I did is I have, it's a 5-day training split. I have 2 days off during the week. One of the days that I train chest is chest and tris. The other day I do upper chest and shoulder day, which is a different split, but upper chest is usually an area that I'm always trying to improve on, and you don't see a guy too often that has like a way overdeveloped upper chest. So it's another day that I can get another stimulus in for chest, and it relates well to shoulder training, so I start with upper chest, and it warms up my shoulders, and it's easy for me to transition into my shoulder pressing movements. So I head over to the Muscle Factory. The movements that I start with for upper chest is a hammer strength press, and actually, I'm sorry, it's an Icarian incline chest press. It's a little bit different in the angle that it presses at. I like starting with the hammer strength and the Icarian pressing movements because I don't have to worry about stabilization, and I can really focus on taking those handles and squeezing them together. And you'll notice in my setup on these videos is that my shoulders are really pulled back, and I'm really pushing forward with my chest to try to take my shoulders out of it. And towards the top, I'm really trying to squeeze and pull those handles together and use a lot of chest in it. Normally a lot of pressing movements, they tell you like pull the bar apart, and that ends up using a lot of triceps in the movement. So for me, I have to be using the right muscle recruitment and using perfect form, and then increasing weight from there. You always hear me talking about increasing training loads and trying to add weight and reps to the bar, but it has to be within the context of using the right form to do so and using the right muscles that you want to be activating during those movements. So what I did on this movement is on this chest day, I work up to a heavy set of somewhere between 8 to 10 reps, and that's my first set. Go on to the second set, I decrease the weight about 10% and just go to failure again. On that third set, I go up and I do another set and go to failure. So 3 sets on my upper chest movement. From then I go on to an isolation movement for upper chest. And I like doing standing cable flies because it gives me a lot of freedom of where I'm moving my humerus in relation to the cable movement, so I can really emphasize where I need it to. I'm not restricted to like a pec deck machine or something like that. So I set the cables about hip height, and while I'm performing the fly and the concentric movement, I'm trying to pull those pinkies towards each other. So as I'm moving, my palms are rotating outwards, I'm supinating and then squeezing up, and that can really get a lot of upper chest into the movement. For this movement, I start with my first set. I work up to a set of about 8 to 10 reps again, and I just keep the weight the same and just get as many reps as I can for 2 more sets. So for this day, I just have 6 sets within my chest day, so the volume's not very high. Again, the way I like to train is all out intensity, so I do keep my intensity up. Since I don't have a lot of calories in this phase while I'm cutting, I'm not trying to overdo it with a lot of volume because I just don't have the recovery capacity, but I am doing my best to maintain my weights and go up where possible. So those movements do warm up my shoulders well, so I can transition over to some pressing movements. And one that I like, I got it from John Meadows. He did rack cage presses or rack presses, and I do them in the Smith machine because it's a very similar movement, and it works well too. The idea behind it is that you're able to keep that bar kind of traveling in front of you, so you don't have this great external rotation, which can strain a lot of people's shoulders and put a lot of stress on the rotator cuff. I like them because even though keeping the bar in front of me too, I end up using a lot of front delt, and you can't use as much weight doing it, which your mechanical advantage isn't great having the weight out in front of you, which it's fine. It's actually a safer movement because of that. And I keep the bar resting on the safety, the catches, which the transition from the eccentric to the concentric phase, it can set up. It's usually the most dangerous part of a lift, that energy transfer. So it takes some of the load off. Ideally, you do want to keep constant tension in a movement, but it can make it a little bit safer if you do have shoulder problems. So setup is about chin height, and again, this definitely the setup is going to depend on your structure and your mechanics and your mobility. So if you can go lower, that's fine, but I would set it up before you start feeling a lot of discomfort in the shoulder before you reach that point. In this one, I do try to go heavier, so I'm trying to hit about a 7 to 10 rep on my first set. Then on the second set, I do a rest pause. I think rest pause is a great way to keep building intensity, but it's not you're not doing a bunch of extra sets beyond that. So I work up. I try to hit another 7 to 10 reps with the same weight, and then I rest about 15 seconds, and then I go again and try to see how many reps I can get. I think I only got 2 reps. Then on my final set, I'll decrease the weight roughly 10% and just rep it out to failure again, which it feels nice to drop back and weight, and the load feels lighter, so you feel like you can get more reps, which you should be able to with a lighter weight, but it has a little bit extra other neural component to it that helps as well. And from there, I move over to dumbbell laterals, and it's always been a mainstay for me, and I feel like I've gotten the movement down finally to really use my lateral head. And the idea here, if you see like those dumbbells, they're always my shoulders always stay slightly internally rotated. So as I go up, I'm leading with my elbow and kind of leading with my pinky. And what I always tell people, do your laterals and look sideways in the mirror. Whatever is the delt that's on top. So if your side delt is the highest point, then that's what you're going to be using. You see a lot of guys that if they look from the side view, and I'll show you here, if you look in my side view, they end up with their front delt on top, or even here your front delt's still on top, and you can see my top knuckles up. And what I'm doing is I'm rotating to where that pinky knuckles up, and I'm leading with the elbow, and you can see my side delt is now the highest point, and that's the part of the delt that I'm using. So you try to use that motion throughout all of your delt movements, and you can get more lateral head into it. So I do stay relatively heavy and do about 8 to 10 reps on my first set. And then on my second and third set, I use rest pause again, just like I did on my Smith presses, and rest about 15 seconds, and then I see how many reps I can get. And each week I'm just trying to beat that, but it's a good way to, you're kind of adding volume in, but you're keeping intensity up. And during a cutting phase, keeping intensity up is so important. You want to keep your weights up. Your weights is part of what causing that mechanical tension that stimulates hypertrophy, and you want that same hypertrophy stimulus while you're cutting, to keep the muscle around and have it give a reason to stay around. So I did that 3 sets there, and then I move on to doing a giant set, and I keep the weights heavy and fairly low reps. So what I'm going to be doing, and it's more of a lateral and front delt focus, is doing the lateral machine, which for that machine, it gives a good constant tension throughout the full range of motion. While your dumbbells are mainly, you're getting a lot of tension towards the top. So it is a similar movement to your lateral, but the tension's directed differently. And I'll go up to about 10 to 12 reps to failure. Then I'll go straight over and I go back to a dumbbell lateral, but I'm only doing partials, but I go a lot heavier. So that since that bottom part of the movement in your lateral raise there's not a lot of tension because the weight's really close to you, you can really use a heavier weight. And I just bring it up till I can't go any farther, which is about a third of the way up. And I'll do about 10 to 12 reps again. Then from there, my slide delts are already pretty fatigued. I can go over to a shoulder press machine and face the opposite way. My path in it is still, the handles in my hands are still out in front of me, so it's still going to be using a lot of front delt, but with those side delts pretty fatigued, you can still feel them working in the movement too. And that's what I'm trying to do is really, I try to do a lot of side delt during this day, because all the pressing I do, it brings a lot of front delt in anyway. And on the presses, I don't go all the way up to lockout to where the triceps are taking over. So I really work from the bottom to about the 2/3 up, and try to keep constant tension when I do these shoulder presses. So for that, so that counts as 3 sets, that circuit, and I do that twice, 2 rounds, which totals up for six total sets. And it does create quite a bit of metabolic stress during that. You do get a good pump, so that's why I keep it at the end. Doing any extra heavy big movements after that, I think fatigue would be setting in and performance wouldn't be as good. So adding like a circuit like that at the end would be the best place to apply that.